Krystal Everdeen, and today I'm going to share with you how to crochet this 0 from the 9 Before Christmas keychain. Now for this project I'm using size 4 100% acrylic yarn in white, in orange, and in red. Now you may also need black yarn if you want to crochet the eyes for this project, but I actually have these little eye beads that I got from Amazon. And speaking of Amazon, if you are curious to know where to get yarn, you could get it on Amazon via my Amazon affiliate links linked in the description box below. I will also have a link to my crochet hook, and I'm using a size 5mm hook. So if you do not have any of these items here, they'll all be linked in the description box down below via my Amazon affiliate links. So again, white yarn, red yarn, orange yarn, potentially black yarn, or anything to make the eyes out of. You could also use felt, and potentially a needle and thread. And once you have all of those items, let's go ahead and start the project. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our white yarn, and we're going to create a slip knot. Now if you are a complete beginner to crochet, I actually do have a Crocheting for Beginners video that I will also link in the description box below, and it goes over how to make a slip knot as well as how to make a chain and other basic stitches that you may need to know before you try this project. And again, that is linked in the description box below. So after you've created your slip knot, you're going to put your hook through it and then chain 2. 1, 2. Then you're going to go into the very first chain that you created with a single crochet. And after you've made your first single crochet, you're going to make 5 more single crochets inside of that same opening. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So your project should look something like this. Just a little round cluster of single crochets. And now that we've gotten to this point, we're going to build upon those single crochets that you made in that first row. So instead of going into the center right here, you're going to go into the single crochet that you created and make yet another row of single crochet on top of that previous row of single crochet. So you're just going to go into every stitch with another single crochet. And if you're wondering what we're working on right now, we are working on 0's head. So this is going to be a round project. Okay, so now that I have gone all around in every single stitch, for the second row of single crochet, we're going to want to start increasing the number of stitches so that this project gets wider and wider and doesn't start to curve in. So if you only crochet 1 single crochet per stitch, it's going to start curving in. So if you see that issue, that means that you need to increase the number of total stitches, and to increase the number of total stitches, we're going to make 2 single crochets inside of 1 stitch. So I'm going to go into the next single crochet of this new row, and instead of just making 1 single crochet within that previous row's single crochet, I'm going to make 2 single crochets inside of that 1 stitch, and now that's going to help increase the total number of stitches for this row. And then for the next stitch, I'm just going to make 1, and then for the stitch after that, I'm going to make 2 single crochets inside of that 1 stitch, and then for the next one, I'm going to just make 1 single crochet, and then for the next one, I'm just going to make 2 single crochets. So you're just going to alternate like that. So for this next one, I'm just going to make 1, and then for the next one, I'm going to make 2 single crochets inside of that 1 single crochet, and then for the next one, I'm going to make 1, and for the next one, I'm going to make 2 single crochets, and then 1 single crochet, and you're just going to go around and around and around until you're happy with the size of the base of the head. So this is pretty much going to be the size of the head. So if you want it to be tiny, then we could skip to the next step. But if you want it to be larger, then just keep going. I'm going to keep going with this pattern until I'm happy with the size of the base of the head. So I will meet you there. Again, the pattern is just making 2 single crochets in 1 stitch, then 1 single crochet in a stitch, then 2 single crochets in the stitch, and go around and around and around. Okay, so now that I'm happy with the size of the base of Zero's head, so again, this is going to be about how big his head is. So if you want a bigger project, just keep going, and if you want a smaller one, then again, you should have stopped when it was small. But I do want mine to be keychain sized, so that's why it's fairly small. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention also, if you run into any of these issues, if it starts curving in like this while you're crocheting and following that pattern with making 1 single crochet, then 2 single crochets as you go along, that just means that you need to actually start increasing more often. So unravel it so that it's flat again, and then start making 2 single crochets for every single single crochet in the previous row. So instead of alternating, just make 2 for every single stitch, and that should help flatten it out. However, if you are running into the opposite problem where actually increasing too much, that means that you're going to see your project kind of ruffle like this, and that means that you're increasing too quickly. So if that's the case and you're following that alternating pattern with 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets, and then you find that it's ruffling, that means that you actually need to increase less often. So maybe do 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets, and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are 2 common issues that people run into, and the 2 solutions on how to solve them. So yes, once you're happy with the size of your project and it's flat like mine is, we're going to move on to the next step, which is to actually purposely start curving it. So if it's curving before, again, that's bad. But however, now we're going to curve it purposely because we're happy with the size of the project. And to curve it, again, we're going to start decreasing. So if we're doing the alternating pattern where we make 2 single crochets for every other stitch, we're just not going to do that anymore. We're just going to make 1 single crochet for every stitch, and that will automatically make it decrease. So that's all you need to do. Once you're happy with the size of the project, you're just going to switch it up and only make 1 single crochet per stitch. And slowly, you're going to realize that the project is going to start curving in, which is great because then we could make the shape of the head. So it's going to take about 2 rows for me to actually show you that it's curving, but yeah, all I'm basically doing is making 1 single crochet per stitch. And you can actually already kind of see it now. It's starting to curve in like this because I'm not making the 2 single crochets and expanding it as it keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's kind of remaining the same size, so it's curving in right here. So that's why it's good to have a base the size that you want it, because it's going to essentially stay that size once we start curving it in. So yeah, that's all you need to do. Just make more single crochets on top of the previous rows of single crochets, and little by little you'll start to see it curve in more and more. And this is what it looks like after 1 row of just making 1 single crochet per stitch. Voila! See, it's starting to curve in a little bit. But if we want to make it curve in a little bit faster, then we're going to start skipping a stitch. So at the beginning of this next row, I'm just going to skip this first stitch right here, and that's really going to decrease the total number of stitches and make it curve even faster. So after I skip that 1 stitch, I don't want it to curve in too fast, so I'm going to make sure that I go into every single stitch, which is my 1 single crochet, until I finish the row. Okay, so now that definitely made the project curve in a lot, and now we're just going to start closing it a little bit faster and faster. So now every 3 stitches, I'm going to skip over it. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to skip over this next stitch, and just go into the one after that, the single crochet, and then make 3 single crochets in a row. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to skip over this next one and go into this next stitch, and then make 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Then skip over that next one, create the single crochet, then 3 single crochets in a row, 2 and 3, then skip over that next one. And this is what the project should be looking like so far. Starting to see that it's becoming a little bit rounder. That's exactly what we want. Now at this time I want the circle to be a little bit wider. I don't want it to close too fast, so I'm actually just going to make 1 row of me going into every single stitch, just so it doesn't close too fast, because if it were to close too fast right now, it would be a little bit too flat. So I want to make it a little longer so that the head is a bit rounder. So that's why I'm just going to make 1 row of me going into every single stitch, no skipping. And then after I've made this row, then I'm going to go back to skipping. So I'm going to be making 3 single crochets and then skipping over one of them, and then make 3 single crochets, skip over one of them, after I make this row, me going into every single stitch. Because again, that's going to elongate it a little bit. Like this. See, it's kind of flat like this, but then with 1 more row, it's a little bit wider. And this is exactly what I wanted. So this is what the project looks like so far. Ooh. And again, yours might look a little bit different if yours is smaller or larger than mine, but it's essentially the same thing. Okay, now that I'm done with the row of single crochet going into every single stitch, I'm going to go back to decreasing. So I'm going to be making 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then I'm going to skip over a stitch and then make a single crochet, and then make 3 single crochets in a row. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to skip over a stitch, make a single crochet into the next stitch, and then make 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Then I'm going to skip over a stitch, make a single crochet into the next one, then go into the next 3 with single crochets, then skip over the next one, and continue the pattern. Now you will notice that the hole is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and before it gets too small, you're going to want to stuff it. Now you can actually use cotton stuffing, but if you don't have cotton stuffing, I just use some yarn, and I just stuff it with yarn. And this is to keep Zero's head in shape. Now the thing is, once you stuff it, it does kind of get in the way of you crocheting. So keep that in mind. I try to stuff it at the very last minute, like it's not going to be able to fit anymore if I don't stuff it right now. So that's the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta stuff it. And you just kind of gotta keep it down as you continue with your pattern. So I actually don't remember if I needed to skip or not, but I'm just gonna make 3 single crochets, and then in that third, or after that third one, I'm going to skip the next stitch, go into the next one with a single crochet, then make 3 single crochets, 2 and 3, then skip over a stitch, make single crochet, then make 3, 1, 2, 3, then skip over a stitch, make a single crochet. And I guess it's kind of hard to see now that I stuffed it with the same color yarn, but the hole is getting smaller and smaller. So this is the hole right here, like this. And you see it's just a little round head now. Yay! So once we are almost done with the head, we're actually going to make the nose. So this is the head, and then we're going to make his little nose right here. But let's go ahead and finish up his head by doing the same pattern. 1, 2, and 3, then skip a stitch and go into the next one, single crochet, 1, 2, 3, then skip a stitch, single crochet, then 1, 2, and 3, then skip a stitch and single crochet, and now the hole is tinier, about that big. And you're going to work until the hole is wide enough where, or as wide as you would want Zero's nose to be. So I'm just going to do probably one more set of this. So 1, 2, 3, then skip a stitch and go into that next one. And I think that's about as wide as I want Zero's nose to be, right here. So we're going to start making his nose. And it's going to be a little cylinder style thing. So we're going to start building upon this now. So to build his nose, remember when I wanted the circle to be a little bit wider and I just did a row of just going into every stitch without any skipping? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do for the nose. So now that we have closed it enough so that this is just how wide his nose is going to be, we are going to make the base of it by just going around this little area, making sure that we go into every single stitch with a single crochet, no skipping, because if you start skipping, you're just going to close the project, and we don't want to close the project right now. We're going to go into every single stitch with a single crochet, and you'll see right away that now you're starting to make a little progress here with the nose. And it's just going to remain the same size since you're going into every single stitch without any skipping, so it's not getting bigger, it's not getting smaller. It's just remaining the same size as the opening. So that's why it's important for you to do this once you're happy with the size of the opening being the base of Zero's nose. Because if it's too big, then Zero's going to have a pretty big nose. If it's too small, then he's going to have a little noodle nose. But if you eyeball it just right, then he's going to have a very accurate looking nose, which I think mine's going to look pretty good because look at it so far. I think that looks very proportional. So I did do a few rows of just going into every single stitch. Now once I reach the halfway point, and by halfway point I mean like halfway to where I want his nose length to be, then I'm going to start decreasing again. So let's see how big his nose is. I would definitely say that's about halfway. So now I'm going to start decreasing, and again all you need to do to decrease is skip a stitch. So I'm going to skip a stitch and then go into the next stitch, the next stitch after that. Then I'm going to skip a stitch. And you can already see it closing really fast. So I'm just going to make one row of me going into every single stitch, so no skipping, just so I could elongate it a little bit before it truly closes. I'm just going to go all around, and it gets smaller and smaller. Woo! And then the last thing I'm going to do is skip a stitch, then go into that very last stitch of this tiny little row, and I'm actually going to slip stitch into it, so now it's closed. And that's how I made Zero's head. Now you can crochet his eyes, and there's going to be 2 little circles for his eyes, but again, I do have these little beads, so I'm just going to put that in here at the end of the project, but I just wanted to give you a little preview of what it's going to look like so you can kind of imagine it. So this is his head, and now we're going to work on his body, and then we'll do the details later. So the final step for his head is to cut the yarn from the yarn ball, and then bring the excess yarn through the last loop and give it a tug. And this is what it looks like. I'm just going to keep this here for now, but then you can of course cut it off later. But this is his head, so let's go ahead and do his body. So for Zero's body, we're going to essentially do kind of the opposite of what we were doing earlier, yet it's going to look like we're doing the exact same thing. So for Zero's body, you're going to make a slip knot, put your hook through that slip knot, and then chain 2. 1, 2. Then you're going to go into the very first chain that you created and create a single crochet. Then 5 more single crochets inside of that same opening. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then from here, you're going to build upon it by going into the single crochets that you created. And we're going to, right off the bat though, this is where it's different. Right off the bat, we're just going to start making 2 single crochets inside of every single stitch. So in every single stitch, you're going to be making 2 single crochets. And what we're doing essentially is now increasing. So, well, before we were making the head, we were doing a lot of decreasing to close the project. We're going to do a lot of increasing to expand the project, because Zero's body starts off small around his neck and then gets wider and wider as it goes down. So we're essentially going to do the exact same thing here, where we start off small, but then we get bigger and bigger. And in order to get bigger and bigger, we need to increase the total number of stitches. So right off the bat, we're going to be making 2 single crochets inside of every single stitch. And I'm going to make 3 rows of this, and then after that, I'm going to up the ante and actually make 3 single crochets inside of every single stitch, just so that it grows even faster. So now that I have made my 3 rows of making 2 single crochets per stitch, I'm going to start making 3 single crochets per stitch. So 1, 2, and 3. Then going to the next one, 1, 2, and 3. And going to the next one, 1, 2, and 3. And because we're making so many stitches and increasing so quickly, you're going to notice that the project is going to start ruffling, which is totally fine because we do want that shape for Zero's body since he has a ghostly body. So it's okay if it's like ruffly and stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to make a row of going into every single stitch and making 3 single crochets inside of each one. Then after this row, we're actually going to switch it up again and actually use a different stitch altogether, one that's not as tight as the single crochet, just so it's a little bit more loose and flowy like a ghost. So now that we have an expanded little circle here, I'm going to make sure that, yep, fits in. We're going to now switch gears, and instead of using a single crochet, we're going to use a double crochet. And a double crochet is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. Now again, since this is a larger stitch, there's a lot more give and play as opposed to a single crochet where it's very tight. It was perfect for his head because we needed it to, you know, contain the stuffing. But now that we want his body to be nice and flowy like a ghost, we want a looser stitch. So you're going to be making double crochets inside of every single stitch. You don't need to make multiple right now. Just go into every single stitch and make 1 double crochet per stitch. And after you've made a few, this is what it looks like. See, they're much taller than the single crochets. So you're going to go all around twice, making sure that you make 1 double crochet inside of every single crochet that you've made in the previous row. So after you've completed your 2 rows of double crochet, your project should look something like this. And this is just a little preview of what the body will look like with Zero's head. So of course you need to make it a little bit longer, and we also want to make it a little droopier. So we're going to now be making 2 double crochets per stitch to increase it even faster. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. So again, you're just going to go all around the project making 2 double crochets per stitch, and it should be nice and ruffly by the end. So this time we again do want the ruffles. So if you see it ruffling, that's perfectly fine. If you see it curling, then that's not good. That means that you're not increasing enough, and you definitely need to increase more often. So ruffling is good and curling is bad for this portion of the project. So I'm just going to continue with my double crochets for the entire row. This is what the project looks like so far, and I will get back to you once I've completed it. So I've just been continuously making rows and rows of double crochet, making sure that I do 2 double crochets inside of every single stitch, and now you can see that the project is really ruffling, which makes the Zero body look so cool in my opinion. So you're just going to keep going until you're happy with the size of the body. I want to probably make like 3 or 4 more rows just so it's a little bit longer, and then I'm going to attach these 2 together, then make the collar and attach the collar, then make his little jack-o'-lantern nose, and we'll be done with the project. So just keep going with that pattern until you're happy with the size of it. Yay! Okay, so this is the final result of many rows of double crochet, making sure that I go into every single stitch, making 2 double crochets, and now it is very, very roughly, which is fantastic because I think that looks so cute. Look at that, it's so cute. Anywho, now we're going to attach the 2 pieces together like this. I actually feel like there should be a little bit of a space in between the body and the head, so we need to make a little neck. And to make the neck, we're just going to make the collar. So from here, actually I'm going to detach the yarn from the yarn ball and seal the project of the body. So cut the yarn from the yarn ball, then I'm going to grab my hook and bring the excess yarn through the last loop. Then I'm just going to tuck it in like so that the excess yarn is hidden away, and then I could just cut it off later. And voila. So that's how I'm going to seal that portion of the project. And now I'm going to make a collar. So from here I'm going to attach the red yarn to the center, like not like the center, but kind of like the opening, as wide as I want my neck to be. So about right here. I'm going to put my hook through it. Then I'm going to bring the red yarn, bring the yarn through that opening, making sure that it still has a little loop. Then I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to make a little circle with my red yarn on top of the center of the body. And I'm going to make sure that I use the yarn that's attached to the yarn ball, and I'm going to make single crochets all around this little neck portion of the body. So it's going to keep going around, making single crochets, and then go around, make a single crochet. Oop, that was a slip stitch. Single crochet. It's going to look something like this for that first row. It's going to look a little bit wonky, but we're going to make another row on top of it so that there's some stability in that neck. So this is going to be the hard part. We're just going around in a circle like this because there's no like dedicated stitch to go into. So it's going to be a little bit hard, but just make sure that you go in a little circle here and you make single crochets. This is what it looks like. And I'm going to seal this, row. Eventually, just go around and around with your single crochet. And then this should be the last stitch right here. Go in right here and single crochet. Okay, so then the project looks something like this. Little red circle in the middle of your zero body. So we're going to build on top of this by making single crochets on top of the single crochets that you created. So it could serve as a neck instead of just a little red circle. So you're going to go into every single single crochet that you created in the previous row and make a row of single crochet. And the project should look something like this. See, it's a little bit more elongated, there's a little bit more space. So now there's going to be space in between the head and the body. And that's exactly what we wanted. So I'm just going to complete this row of single crochet, making sure I go into every single stitch with the single crochet. And then once I have made it all around, then I can cut the yarn from the yarn ball and seal the project. I'm going to go into that very last stitch here, and voila, here's a little bit of the collar. And I'm going to cut the yarn from the yarn ball. And I'm going to bring the excess yarn through the last loop, give it a tug, and voila, there is Zero's body and his collar. And now we're going to attach his head like this. Aww. So cute. But first we're going to make his little jack-o'-lantern nose actually, and then we're going to attach everything with a needle and thread. You can attach everything with just a slip stitch and some yarn with your hook, but I like to actually sew everything together, so totally up to you. But first, again, let's go ahead and make his little jack-o'-lantern nose. So I'm going to grab my orange yarn and create a slip knot, and this is going to be a very, very tiny little circle essentially, kind of a tinier scaled down version of making his head. So you're going to create a slip knot, put your hook through that slip knot, and then you're going to chain 2, 1, 2, then you're going to go into that very first chain and make a single crochet. Then you're going to make 4 more single crochets inside of that same opening, 2, 3, and 4. Then you're just going to go into every single crochet that you created one time, and once you've made your total of 5 single crochets going all around, then you're going to skip a stitch and make a single crochet, then skip a stitch and make a single crochet, and then you've officially just finished the project. And it's just a little ball. So you're just going to skip around, and then once you've made it into the last stitch, there's your little jack-o'-lantern ball. Woo! And that's it. Yeah. And that's going to be his nose. So you're going to cut the excess yarn from the yarn ball, then bring the excess yarn through the last stitch, then try to tuck it in so it's nice and away and the project is cleaner. Little nose here, and voila, there's his little jack-o'-lantern nose now. So now that we have all the pieces, oh wait, we need his ears. Sorry about that, forgot about his ears. So we're going to grab the white yarn yet again, and we're going to make a slip knot. And after you've created that slip knot, you're going to chain a chain of, let me go ahead and test this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, I think that's a good size. So 12 chains. Then you're going to go back on that chain with a slip stitch first, then another slip stitch, so 2 slip stitches, then a single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get to about the middle, and then you're going to make a double crochet. 1, 2, and 3 double crochets. Then you're going to go back to single crochet and finish off the chain with a single crochet. So what I'm trying to do here is make the middle of the project big and the ends of the project small, since his ears kind of get wider in the middle and then skinnier at the top. So that's my thinking here. So I'm going to chain 1, flip the project over, then go into the very first stitch with a single crochet, then head on over to where I have my double crochets, and once I have my double crochets, I'm going to make more double crochets on top of the previous rows of double crochets, like so. And now the middle is way wider than the ends, which is exactly what I was going for. And then once I reach the single crochets, go back to making a single crochet, and then finish off the ear with just slip stitches at the end. Voila! And then you have a little 0 ear like this. Very flowy, very fun little ear like that. And then you're just going to complete the project and do the exact same thing over again on the other side. So you're just going to cut the yarn from the yarn ball and bring the excess yarn through the last loop, and voila, you have little 0's ears. So just do the exact same thing and then you'll have 2 ears. Okay, now that we have all the pieces, we got the head, we got the body with the collar, we have the little jack-o'-lantern nose, and we have the ears. It's time to put everything together. And again, you can just slip stitch everything together with the yarn and hook that you already have, but I like to use a needle and thread just because I think it's easier, because the needle and the thread is so much thinner than my hook and yarn. So all I'm essentially going to do is place everything where I want it to go, and then I'm just going to sew them together, and that's basically it. So I'm just going to sew everything so that it's attached where I want them to be. Voila. And then I'll show you the end result. Okay, so I've successfully attached his head, and this is what it looks like. And now I'm going to attach everything else. And here's 0 with his ears attached. Now just for the eyes and his little nose. Okay, 0 is almost done. We just need to put in his eyes. And again, if you do not have these, you can always just crochet some circles, and those could be his eyes with some black yarn, or I guess whatever color you want his eyes to be. But I bought these little plastic eyes specifically for whenever I make little plushies like this. And this is 0. This is his final result. I would actually suggest putting some glue in the eyes and then putting it in instead of just what I'm doing right now, because with other little plushies that I've made, the eyes tend to fall out rather easily. So after this video, I'm going to go ahead and add some glue to the ends right here and then put it in here. So yeah, that is how to crochet a little 0 keychain. Oh, actually, let's go ahead and make him an actual keychain. So I bought these little lobster claw / keyring keychain things off Amazon, which will also be linked in the description box below. So what I'm going to do is just sew it on to the top of his head so he could now be attached to my bag and I could rock him anywhere. So I'm going to go through this little loop right here and then just sew him onto the back of his head like this, like so, like make a circle right here. And now it is attached, so I'm just going to do that a couple more times just so it's more secure, and then he'll be a full-on keychain. Okay, so now that the keyring is actually attached, Zero is officially a little keychain, and that concludes this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, found it interesting, entertaining, or helpful, and if you did, please give it a big thumbs up before you go. And also check out the rest of my channel because I have so many crochet tutorials for you, ranging from beginner friendly to more advanced, to crochet with me's, how I style crochet projects, and so much more. And if you love Disney and I'm ready for Christmas, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at Krystal Everdeen. It's a fun time and I hope to see you there. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you click that red subscribe button so I can see you next time. Bye! And have a magical day.